In this video, we're going to install Watson Explorer. Now, first of all, this is Watson Explorer and not Watson Analytics. Watson Analytics is a SaaS-based offering, and here's its webpage, whereas WEX is an on-premises or on-prem solution. Now, even though it's on-prem, you can access cloud-based services using the Watson Developer Cloud, which gives you access to all of these services. Now, the purpose of Watson Explorer and the reason for installing it is all about indexes. So let's say you have some databases and a document store with PDFs and Word docs and Excel docs and a series of web pages, maybe survey data, Twitter feeds, some Facebook information. And when you put all that together, you have a corpus of data. And in WEX, you group the corpus into what's called a collection. But the purpose of the index is to find data somewhere inside that corpus. So your corpus may have 16 million documents, and you may want to find a single word from inside all of those documents. This is a needle in the haystack problem. Now, the typical solution to this problem is to create an index where you have a list of documents, doc 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each of those has a list of words inside. That's how crawlers like Google and also WEX work. But it turns out that a forward index is most efficient for building the index, and an inverted index is most efficient for searching that index. Now, an inverted index looks like this, where the word comes first and then the documents that contain them. And if you look at this book, you'll see an example of this using Lucene, which creates the index, and Solr, which searches it, both of which are in WEX. And this is interesting because Google uses an inverted index to search the web. In fact, the need to build a web-scale inverted index led to the invention of MapReduce. And MapReduce is where Hadoop comes from, since Hadoop started as a subproject of Lucene, as explained in this book. So that's indexes. The other thing you'll see is structured versus unstructured data. Unstructured data is by humans for humans, and structured data is typically databases, rows and columns. So this data here is mostly, if not all, unstructured data, whereas this information here is largely structured, although in the case of Exchange Server, you have emails, and that of course is unstructured. And WEX can handle both structured and unstructured data. So again, WEX is all about indexes, and there are three things typically you do with an index. You create them, you search them, and you analyze them. And keep in mind that before that index gets created, something has to go out and crawl the original data, which means read it. And keep in mind, whatever data you have in your documents and your databases gets pulled into your index. So if you have confidential information in your original documentation, in your original databases, it will also be in your index. So how do you install WEX? Well, it turns out WEX by itself is not an individual product. It's composed of three separate products: Foundational Components, Analytical Components, and OmniFind Enterprise Search, which is what provides Lucene. Now, Foundational Components was actually an IBM acquisition of a company called Vivisimo. Analytical Components was formerly called Watson Content Analytics and is also called just Content Analytics, or CA. But TACME is really the core of the analytical components, which is much like Natural Language Toolkit from Python, but gives you sentiment analysis and some other things built in. OneWEX is a Docker container that holds both FC and AC. Here is a comparison between the two products. Here are some details about the acquisition of Vivisimo, and you can tell that once you have WEX installed, you'll even see Vivisimo listed in the URL. Notice that in version 10, you could see these three editions: Standard, Enterprise, and Advanced, and you get Vivisimo for Standard and Enterprise, but it wasn't until Advanced that you would get Content Analytics. Then when version 11 came out, it came out in Enterprise and Advanced, where Advanced included Content Analytics. Then in version 12, you see further consolidation into OneWEX, where both come in a single container. And if you look at this book, you'll see that history. And this red book even tells you the inventor's name, Tetsuya Nasukawa. So here is the history of the products, which, although this may seem not related, when you do the install, you will still see paths that say Enterprise Search /ES. And actually there are three products here. So you have this search core, which became OmniFind, and this is creating and searching the index, whereas TACME does all the great analytics on top of the index. And it was here in 2014, after they merged, that IBM acquired Vivisimo, which then does even greater scale searching and creating of the index. It also matters because when you go to the Knowledge Center under Watson Explorer, you'll see these later versions say Watson Explorer, but the earlier one was Infosphere Data Explorer. And you'll see if you go to Watson Content Analytics, which is now deprecated in favor of WEX, that it also had only 2 versions and they started at 3. But under the hood, Watson Content Analytics is the TalkMe product. And here you can see that Watson Explorer is composed of foundational components and the analytical components. Again, AC is the TalkMe product. So now that you know the difference between FC and AC, we're going to show how to install both as well as OneWEX.